All right, in this segment, we're going over MOA and MILS and which one you should buy. So I run all of my scopes in MOA right now. However, you've probably, if you've been watching YouTube and trying to figure out what scope you want to buy, you've seen a lot of stuff about MILS. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. The reason why I run all of my scope, well, let's at least talk a little bit about minutes of angle and MILS and the difference. So minutes of angle is pretty much units of measurement in inches. So milliradians is measurement in centimeters. So if you take a ruler, one side is inches, the other side is centimeters. So with that, it's basically what type unit of measurement do you want to use? I grew up using inches. Here in America, we predominantly use inches, and I understand inches better than I do centimeters. And these scopes, all of my scopes, adjust for 1 click equals 1/4 of an inch at 100 yards. And so every 4 clicks, I come up 1 inch at 100 yards. Pretty simple, and the math is simple. And so for me, I understand that in my mind better than I do operating in centimeters. However, if I were to be starting all over and I were to be buying a scope for the first time and I was going to be getting into NRL Hunter and PRS and long range shooting, I would go with a milliradian scope and I would learn the units of measurement that are milliradians, which translates into centimeters when you start making adjustments. And the reason why is because everybody in precision long range shooting and NRL Hunter and military, law enforcement, they are all moving to a milliradian system in their scopes. And the reason is the numbers always stay smaller when you go to make adjustments. And so, for example, at if we're doing wind calls and the wind's 8 miles an hour coming from left to right, in my scope at 1,000 yards, I'm going to be aiming 8 MOA to the left, where in a meridian scope, you may be aiming 0.5 or 0.8. And so it's just a little bit easier. Like the numbers are smaller when it comes to the adjustments that you have to make, and you're aiming left or right. Uh, it's actually a little bit smaller in your scope. And so it's a little bit easier. However, if you are buying your first scope and you are not getting into precision long range shooting, if you're not getting into NRL Hunter, and when I say precision long range shooting, I'm talking about like PRS matches. But you just want to go plink, and it's going to be you and your dad and your brother and a couple of friends, and maybe you take a course from me, like in person. Minutes of angle is just fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I would suggest you do that because you definitely probably understand inches better than you do centimeters. But if you want to speak the same language as everybody in a PRS NRL world, you may want to go with a milliradian. The other thing with it is this, that if you're going to be doing some basic hunting, you're going to pull that rifle out a couple of times a year to go shoot a deer or an elk or something like that, go with minutes of angle. You already understand it. And so that's pretty much the gist of minutes of angle versus MILS. If I were to be starting new into long range shooting and getting into PRS matches NRL, I would definitely be buying a milliradian scope and learning the milliradian system so that I can communicate with other people in that industry so that we're speaking the same language. If I'm not doing that and I'm just going to be doing my own precision long range shooting and I'm going to be going out with just some buddies, I'm definitely going to go with an MOA. Those are the differences. That's what I would do. Take my opinion for what it's worth, but across the board, that seems to be the general consensus from the professionals as well.